Remember that old saying, move fast and break things? Well, imagine applying that to, to actual money.
Yeah.
Today, we're diving into the world of Tezos, a cryptocurrency that dared to ask, what if we could upgrade money itself?
And they were asking this way back in 2014, long before most people even knew what a Bitcoin was. This paper by L.M. Goodman, it's like a time capsule of how forward-thinking they were.
Okay, so full disclosure, I geek out a little over this stuff, but even I was surprised how this paper predicted so many of the headaches crypto ran into. Like, they were already talking about forks back then.
And using smartphones as an analogy, which I thought was clever.
Yeah.
Imagine if every time Apple or Samsung updated their software, like your phone just became incompatible with older versions.
Right.
Complete chaos. Okay.
Total communication breakdown.
Yeah.
And Goodman points out that's what early cryptocurrencies were dealing with.
Right.
Each new coin was like its own island, which kind of defeats the purpose of a decentralized network, doesn't it?
Exactly. The paper really stresses how much value crypto gets from the network effect. The more people use it, the stronger it becomes. Fragmentation totally undermines that.
So how did Tezos try to solve this? The paper dives into this whole concept of on-chain governance, which sounds like, well, governing how the currency itself changes, right?
It's like building the upgrade mechanism directly into the system. Think of it like this. Instead of your phone just automatically updating and maybe causing problems, you, along with every other user, get to vote on what changes are made and when.
So it's more democratic, more controlled. But this is where it gets really interesting for me. They didn't just want to change how things were decided, but also the underlying tech itself. Specifically, this proof-of-stake concept. What's that all about?
Goodman basically says, look, proof of work, the system Bitcoin uses, it has some serious flaws.
Yeah.
They were already worried about mining pools getting too powerful, almost like having a central bank controlling everything.
Which, again, kind of defeats the whole decentralized dream, right?
Exactly. And they didn't even get into the environmental impact back then, which is huge. Proof of work uses a ridiculous amount of energy because you have all these computers racing to solve equations.
Yeah, we're talking massive server farms, huge electricity bills. Not exactly sustainable.
And that's where proof of stake comes in. Tezos wants to incentivize users to be both miners and stakeholders. So instead of just solving equations to get coins, you're putting your money where your mouth is. You have a vested interest in the currency's success.
Okay, so that makes sense. It's like you're putting your money where your mouth is. But doesn't that mean like people who have more coins have more power? Is that really fair?
That's a great question, and the paper actually addresses that concern. Goodman argues it's more nuanced than just raw coin count. See, in proof of work, the more computing power you have, the more influence you wield. That's how these massive mining pools became so dominant. With proof of stake, your voting power is proportional to your stake, but there are mechanisms in place to prevent any one entity from completely dominating the system.
So it's not just about the haves and the have-nots. There's some balance built in.
Precisely. And it gets even more interesting when you look at how Tezos handles smart contracts. Remember, these are those self-executing contracts on the blockchain, the things that make DeFi and NFTs possible.
Yeah, I've dabbled in a little DeFi myself.
Right.
It can be a bit of a Wild West out there sometimes.
Well, imagine the Wild West without any sheriffs. Goodman points out that early smart contract platforms were limited because you could have these infinite loops or denial of service attacks, which could essentially grind the whole system to a halt.
So like one bad contract could crash the entire party.
Exactly. And that's where Tezos took a different approach. They chose to use OCaml, a programming language known for its focus on security. Think of it like building your house on solid bedrock versus, quicksand.
Okay, so no more house of cards collapsing with OCaml.
You got it. In fact, one of the most famous crypto hacks, the DAO hack of 2016, it exploited a vulnerability that OCaml is specifically designed to prevent. We're talking about billions of dollars lost because of a preventable code flaw.
Wow, that's scary. It's like they saw the future of crypto vulnerabilities and said, nope, not on our watch.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the code itself, it was about a philosophy of security. They even talk about using formal verification, which is basically using math to prove that the code does exactly what it's supposed to do.
Hold on, math proofs for code. That sounds intense.
It is, but it also shows how seriously they took this whole thing. They knew that if you're going to build a self-amending system, you better be damn sure the foundation is rock solid. And that leads us to what I think is the most mind-blowing part of this whole paper.
Hit me with it.
Goodman argues that a system like Tezos could be used for so much more than just currency. They actually envision it as a tool for collective action, for solving problems that have plagued humanity for centuries.
Okay, now you're speaking my language. Tell me more.
Think about things like funding public goods, like parks or libraries, or coordinating large-scale charitable efforts. Traditionally, these things are incredibly difficult to pull off because you need a ton of people to agree on how to spend their money.
Yeah, it's like herding cats. Everyone has their own idea of what's important.
Exactly. But Goodman suggests that with on-chain governance, stakeholders could vote to allocate a small percentage of the total currency towards a common goal, effectively creating a built-in mechanism for collective action.
Wait, like a self-funding system for the greater good.
Precisely. Imagine a world where we could actually coordinate on a global scale to address issues like climate change or poverty. That's the kind of potential Goodman saw in Tezos.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. We've gone from, like, upgrading smartphones to solving world hunger. But let's be real for a second. This all kind of hinges on people actually agreeing on something.
Yeah, right.
And haven't we kind of proven throughout history that that's not always humanity's, like, strong suit?
You're absolutely right to point that out, yeah. It's the big what if of the whole thing. Goodman acknowledges this, highlighting that it all comes down to designing a system where acting rationally for the benefit of the whole is also the most beneficial for each individual.
So you need to make it in people's best interest to do the, like, right thing.
Exactly. It's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water. Goodman argues that Tezos' structure, with its proof-of-stake mechanism and on-chain governance, makes it more likely for those incentives to align. But it's not a guaranteed utopia.
Right, because even with best intentions, things can still go wrong. And we haven't even touched on the fact that technology itself can have, unintended consequences.
Yeah. You're hitting on a really crucial point. And this is where I think the paper is incredibly insightful, even philosophical. It's not just about the tech. It's about what it means to have a self-amending system, especially when it comes to something as, as fundamental as currency.
Yeah, it's like we're used to money, even digital money, having some kind of stability. But what happens when the rules themselves can change?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Goodman doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but they do raise some fascinating possibilities. Imagine, for example, a world where a cryptocurrency could automatically adjust its own supply in response to economic conditions, preventing things like hyperinflation.
That's wild. It's like having a central bank, but without the central bank.
Exactly. Or imagine a future where DAOs, those decentralized autonomous organizations we've talked about before, use self-amending systems to evolve and adapt to new challenges and opportunities, like in real time. This paper really planted the seeds for a whole new way of thinking about organization and governance.
So for someone listening right now, like, what does this all mean? Should we all be rushing out to buy Tezos?
Well, we're not in the business of giving financial advice here.
Of course not.
But I think what's most valuable here is the way this 2014 paper, forces us to think differently about money, about technology, and even about society itself.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that these systems are more than just like lines of code or, speculative assets. They're experiments in decentralized governance, and they have the potential to reshape our world in ways we can only begin to imagine.
Precisely. And whether you're a diehard crypto enthusiast or just curious about the future, understanding these concepts is essential because the future of money might be far stranger and more exciting than we think.
No doubt about it. If you're ready to dive even deeper into the world of self-amending cryptocurrency, we'll link to the full Tezos paper in the show notes. It's a fascinating read, even if you don't, consider yourself a techie. Until next time, keep those brain cells firing and stay curious.